Mr. Taufik, should we start?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you very much for the feedback.
Recording in progress.
So let's get it started. Okay, let me check the participants first. How many participants now? I see here there are 28 participants, including me. So thank you very much for attending this online webinar. Well, so let's get it started. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
So how is everybody doing? Hello, good afternoon.
I'm great.
I'm
doing
good,
sir.
I'm doing good.
traffic
Thank you,
jam.
sir.
Thank you very much. So you're excited and ready to learn for today's webinar, right? Okay, let me check first. Where are you from? So I believe that you come from different regions, not only from Bandung or West Java, but also from, let me ask, okay, anyone from Makassar or Sulawesi? Yeah, greetings from Semarang, Central Java. Also, please leave a comment in the chat box. Where are you from? Okay, Semarang. Thank you very much. Piye kabare? So, apik-apik bae nggih? Alhamdulillah. Oh, greeting from Kalbar. Okay, from Makassar. Apa kareba? Baju-baju? Okay. Oh, from Bangka Belitung. From Tangsel, Tangerang Selatan. Okay. Bandung here, yo. Thank you very much. Okay, Miss Hartati from Kota Bau-Bau, Southeast Sulawesi. Okay. So far, thank you very much. Coming around from Indonesia, all over Indonesia. Thank you very much. Jakarta. Okay. Oh, I remember a latest song, High School in Jakarta. Jakarta, welcome. Welcome to Bandung, Miss Rinda Ridstia. And Padalarang. Okay, everything is expensive there. Padalarang. Larang is expensive in Japanese, right? Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for attending today's webinar. And before we start, I'd like to inform you some announcements. First of all, let's watch brief profile about Alpha Centauri schools. So the operator, Ms. Siska, are you ready?
Sure, Mr. Taufik. Which
Yes.
school first?
What do you think, Ms. Siska? Elementary school, junior high, or senior? SD or elementary school, that's okay. So
we will start from senior high school. Would that be okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Let's watch.
How will it transform the lives of the people there?
Okay, I've sent the link to the chat box. Can you please check your chat box? Have a sign here. Don't worry, just hold my hand. I think it's very cool, very high tech, and you think it's probably happening in the future, or you think it's very useful for you.
Okay, have changed the screen to SMP Alpha Centauri video profile.
Yes,
Can you see it
Siska.
on screen? Okay.
By all means.
For your confirmation.
Okay.
The educational institution of Alpha Centauri was constituted of good intentions and strong willingness to lead the finest future generations. Alpha Centauri GHS was established in 2008 under the Taqwa Cerdas Creative Foundation.
At Alpha Centauri, we have a sky-high vision, which is to be the finest school in the world. We don't use the word best that are commonly used, but instead we use the word fine to mean that we are all here, the teacher, the student, even the staff, they are all here not to compete against each other or other schools, but to compete against themselves.
Alpha Centauri Junior High School, under the Taqwa Cerdas Creative Foundation, was established because of deep concern, care, and high commitment to bring and achieve a good quality of education. By the vision to be the finest school in the world, our aim to bring Alpha Centauri Junior High School as an educational institution that is able to immerse students' spiritual and intellectual potential, and also to build a strong character as a great leader and also having akhlakul karimah.
Alpha Centauri Junior High School's curriculum is designed based on the national curriculum standard, combined with some strengthened programs and potential development of every students with various backgrounds, such as program for special needs students and program for school subjects strengthened based on career guidance. Since early, Alpha Centauri GHS always welcomes students who are not affording school in order to help to overcome social inequality in our environment and to fulfill the right to education for every person in this country. By the vision to be the finest school in the world, Alpha Centauri GHS is always actively participating and always endeavoring to attain achievement in regional, national, or even international level. The way to realize the vision is written in Alpha Centauri GHS mission, Taqwa, Cerdas, Creative in order to build students to be faithful, intelligent, and creative. Some programs to improve Taqwa mission are followed: Tahfiz, Tilawah in the morning, Congregational Duha, and Zuhur prayer. And to improve students' empathy and social responsibility, Revivify the Nation program for the ones who are needed. Now, the Taqwa Cerdas Creative Foundation implements character curriculum, a typical Alpha Centauri's curriculum to cultivate love for Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, Quran, and Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in every student, and also to obey the Sunnah of our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as a role model in their life. By using this curriculum, students are used to applying good manners, such as eating and speaking manners, manners towards teachers and parents, and also manners of study. To realize the Cerdas mission, Alpha Centauri GHS tries to lead students to have life skill and also to lead the students to be proactive towards knowledge, technology, and global development. And to make students creative, Alpha Centauri GHS develops some activities to explore students' creativity and potential, such as Annual Parents' Day, Scouts, and other extracurricular. To reach the goals, Alpha Centauri GHS is backed by managements and also teachers who are professional, competitive, and high dedicated resources. The whole elements muster the entire energy and competencies to reach the goal and also to reach the vision and mission of Alpha Centauri GHS. With the 7 characters, Alpha Centauri students are expected to be bright as shining star in the future, as bright as star Alpha Centauri.
Silakan disiapkan dulu
Ya, jadi harapannya ini betul-betul ajang untuk belajar. Nah, sesuai dengan namanya, belajar bareng ya, belajar bareng ya, bukan nonton bareng. Nah, belajar bareng. Jadi kalau belajar bareng silahkan dimanfaatkan acara ini untuk bisa betul-betul sesuai namanya ya, belajar bersama. Nah, belajar bersama. Belajar bersama berarti nanti ngitung bareng, mikir bareng gitu ya.
Okay, operator. Thank you very much.
Okay, pardon me. So this is the youngest member of Alpha Centauri School.
Selamat datang di Sekolah Dasar Alpha Centauri. Inilah sekolah penyelenggara pendidikan inklusif yang didirikan pada tanggal 12 Juli 2009 di bawah naungan Yayasan Takwa, cerdas, kreatif, yang percaya bahwa setiap anak dengan karakteristiknya masing-masing mampu tumbuh dan berkembang menjadi diri mereka yang terbaik.
Dengan mengusung visi to be the finest school in the world, SD Alpha Centauri mengedepankan pendidikan inklusi ramah anak yang berbasis pada riset dan pembentukan karakter. Dari nama Alpha Centauri, yang merupakan nama salah satu gugus bintang ketiga yang paling terang, bintang Alpha Centauri, yang mana merupakan bintang kembar, dan inilah yang menjadi dasar lambang SD Alpha Centauri yang merepresentasikan filosofi Alsen menjadi partner pendidik orang tua untuk mengantarkan Ananda sukses di dunia dan akhirat.
Sebagai sekolah penyelenggara inklusi, SD Alpha Centauri menerapkan kurikulum nasional Kemendikbud yang disesuaikan dengan kebutuhan siswa. SD Alpha Centauri berusaha memfasilitasi setiap siswa agar menjadi yang terbaik sesuai dengan bakat dan keunikan masing-masing untuk menghadapi tantangan zaman. Proses pembelajaran dilaksanakan dengan pendekatan student-centered learning, collaborative learning, dengan memanfaatkan teknologi dan komunikasi, serta pembiasaan baik untuk menanamkan 7 karakter siswa, yaitu jujur, bersih dan rapi, disiplin, mandiri, sopan dan santun, tangguh, dan bermanfaat.
Sebagai sekolah penyelenggara pendidikan inklusif, SD Alpha Centauri memiliki LSU atau Learning Support Unit. Ini adalah unit layanan yang menyediakan program untuk siswa berkebutuhan khusus di bawah pengawasan psikolog. Program LSU tertuang dalam program pendampingan individual secara akademik dan perilaku serta layanan terapi. Untuk mendukung pembelajaran kolaboratif dan pedagogi, SD Alpha Centauri menjalin program kemitraan dengan Bridge yang menghubungkan kemitraan dengan komunitas sekolah, salah satunya The Hills Montessori, Adelaide, Australia sejak tahun 2018. Untuk membentuk generasi takwa, cerdas, kreatif, maka SD Alpha Centauri menyusun program yang berpijak kepada ranah takwa, cerdas, kreatif. Dalam ranah takwa, sekolah menyelenggarakan program keagamaan seperti tahfiz, munakosyah, sholat duha, dan sholat wajib berjamaah. Dalam ranah cerdas, siswa mendapatkan penguatan numerasi melalui program Surala, yaitu metode belajar e-learning yang berfokus pada penguatan konsep dasar berhitung matematika yang berasal dari negara Jepang. Juga penguatan literasi dengan program Reading Challenge yang dilaksanakan secara berkala. Untuk mendukung pembelajaran digital, sekolah menggunakan platform pembelajaran seperti Talents LMS, Nearpod, BookWidget, Zoom, dan sebagainya. Kegiatan project-based learning diharapkan dapat memfasilitasi siswa untuk bisa berkolaborasi sesuai dengan kebutuhan zaman. Untuk ranah kreatif, sekolah menyelenggarakan kegiatan seperti Pekan Refleksi, Parents Day, Pekan Kreativitas, dan Expo. Untuk penguatan 7 karakter Alpha Centauri, siswa dibiasakan untuk melakukan kegiatan pembiasaan pagi setiap harinya, mulai dari upacara bendera, olahraga, murojaah, nyunda, Jumat bersih, dan berkisah. Melalui kegiatan ekstrakurikuler, siswa mampu memperdalam kemampuan dalam bidang yang diminati di luar akademik. Ekstrakurikuler yang dapat dipilih siswa diantaranya adalah sinematografi, marching band, bermusik, pramuka, renang, futsal, robotik, menari, dan taekwondo. Ragam inovasi dalam kegiatan pembelajaran ini tidak terlepas dari dukungan sumber daya guru yang berkualitas. Oleh karena itu, SD Alpha Centauri menempatkan peningkatan kualitas guru sebagai salah satu fokus utama penyelenggaraan pendidikannya. Kami berusaha meningkatkan dan mempertahankan kualitas guru-guru dengan pengembangan kualitas guru melalui program pengembangan keprofesian seperti seminar, workshop dan kelas bahasa Inggris, kelas tahsin, dan penguasaan teknologi.
SD Alpha Centauri.
Wow, what a brief school profile videos from Alpha Centauri schools. As we know, Alpha Centauri schools are managed under Yayasan Takwa Cerdas Kreatif. If you come to Bandung, don't forget to come over for senior high school. It's located on Diponegoro Street, and for junior high, is located on Palasari Street. And for the youngest school member, which is Elementary School of Alpha Centauri, located on, I forgot, what's that? Oh, what's the street? I forgot, operator, can you please? Terate Street, yeah. For your information, it's near station, Cikudapatu Station and Kosambi Market. Thank you. Okay, so let me welcome the participants who have just joined. Thank you very much for coming. And most of you are English teachers, right? And I'm glad to see you, great English teachers, in today's webinar. Before we start the webinar, let me read the house rules for today's webinar. Okay. For today's webinar, we have several rules. First, be on time. Second, dress appropriately and situate yourself in quiet place so there will be no disruptions. And don't forget, turn off your microphone during the session unless you are asked to respond. And please listen attentively and give respect to the speaker. And inquiries and clarification will only be entertained after the talk or if the speaker falls for it. Please use the chat box for your concern. Wait until you are recognized and the facilitator will attend to you. Keep an open mind as you listen to the speaker. Respect co-attendees or co-participants. Should you have any clarification and concerns about the webinar, you may chat personally to the technician, to the committee, to the chat box. And again, let me inform you that Alpha Centauri schools have implemented some programs, and one of them is using learning tools, blended learning by using one of the best learning management system in the world, namely Canvas LMS, which is supported by the integration of various types of learning apps such as Nearpod, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Genially, and Microsoft OneNote. Let me remind you, please turn on your camera and use the virtual background for today's webinar. Thank you. Okay, let me check. Okay, thank you for using the virtual background. Okay, the virtual background should be, you know, like mine here behind Alpha Centauri Training Academy. And thank you very much for ACTA, Alpha Centauri Training Academy, for organizing this event. And next information is about LCDU. LCDU, or Learning Language Center and Da'wah for Ummah, is one of Alpha Centauri units. And inshallah, in the next October, there will be an event. What is that? The event is so interesting because it's gonna talk about English certification, okay, especially teachers' development, for example, like TKT and then CELTA, right? So I can't wait to see your presence in the next training, in the next talk show held by LCDU, Language Center and Da'wah for Ummah, on the 4th of October, okay, in the afternoon, at 4 p.m. in the afternoon. Thank you very much. So that's the information. And Jeremy Hammer has joined our session. Okay. So we are about to begin. Are you ready?
Now then, can you, oh, wait a minute. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
We can hear you,
Good.
sir.
Hello, everyone. Sorry if I'm a bit late.
Hi. Hello,
Hello.
sir.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Hi, Jeremy.
Now, if I can share, who's in
Yes.
in charge of the session?
Okay. Jeremy,
Yeah.
I'm in charge for the session. I'm the moderator.
Good to meet you.
Good to meet you too. Okay, shall we start now?
Yes, I'm going to share something on my screen. I'm going to share screen, okay?
Okay, so let me do the opening first. So everyone, are you ready? And make sure you turn on your camera. Use virtual background. Okay, thank you very much. For those who have used virtual background, yes, thank you very much. So it's a rare opportunity for us to meet Jeremy, although it's online, but it's such a rare opportunity and it's wonderful, wonderful. So let's begin.
Hello, everyone. Look, before I begin, I just want to say greetings from Cambridge in the United Kingdom, which is where I'm based. That's where I live, and I'm in my studio at the moment. I wish I was there, because on my trips over there, I've had the most wonderful time working with teachers there, and also eating some of the best food of my life. But we won't talk about that. So I wish I was there, but this is the best we can do these days sometimes, and I'm just thrilled to see you all. Now, I'm going to try and share my screen and see if it works. And it looks as if it might work. Let's try that.
Okay.
Yes, and let's try that.
Yes, we can see
Good.
that. I can see that.
We're on.
What about the others? Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
All clear, sir. Thank you.
Right. Now then, when I discussed this with Isan, what to talk about, the topic on his mind was the whole issue of learner autonomy. And so I'm going to spend our time talking about learner autonomy, and hopefully I'll finish in time for you to tell me what you think. Maybe ask me some questions, maybe criticisms, maybe, well, anything you want, basically. That's the idea. And my essential question is, can students learn on their own? And if they can, how do they do it? Because if they could, well, it's a slightly difficult one, isn't it? Because if students could learn on their own, they wouldn't need us. On the other hand, we know that most students do need us, but if we can persuade them to take some responsibility for their own learning, they've got a much better chance of ending up with good English. So let's start from the very beginning. Why do some people speak English fluently whilst others do not? Or rather, let's put this question a different way. If you think of yourselves and you compare yourselves with the people you were at school with, you all speak English. Do all of your classmates from those days speak English in the same way? And I don't know you very well, but I'm pretty certain that the answer is no. I'm pretty certain that you are, well, you're special. Are you special? But for some reason, you speak English well, and many of those people who you were at school with when you were a kid do not speak English well. And the real question is, why not? Why not? Because in one sense, you all come from the same kind of place and the same kind of school and that kind of thing. Why not? And this is a question that's preoccupied me for a long time in my teaching profession. And especially when I work with teachers from around the world. And it's a question that I often ask: how come you speak such good English whilst the other people you're at school with do not? And there seem to be a number of very definite answers. Well, the first one is because of, in some cases, it's just obvious, because for some reason, the teachers I'm working with lived in an English-speaking country, or operated in an English-speaking country, or lived and worked, or were in an English-speaking community of some kind. So that's one possibility. Or maybe one of their parents was an English-speaking parent and kept up this bilingual tradition in the family. But that's the obvious answer, and that's almost impossible to replicate in a classroom. You can't just suddenly say, right, well, of course. You could say, we are only going to speak English in our classroom. No other language is allowed. But that's very complicated, and we can talk about that some other time. So that's one of the first reasons why some people speak English when their classmates don't. But the one that fascinates me is when students, kids, teenagers get a passion for something, a passion for a hobby, a passion for something. A Cuban teacher I know, I said, how come you speak English so well and your classmates that you were at school with when you were a teenager, they don't? He said, well, when I was 11, he said, I became absolutely obsessed with a computer game and I wanted to play it. The only problem was, he said, that the game was in English. So I taught myself English. And I think, I can't do that. I couldn't do that. I had a friend staying last weekend. He's from Mexico, a country that I lived in for many years and I love. And he speaks perfect English. I said, how come? And he said, no, well, it wasn't school. It was because I was fascinated in songs and pop songs and films and stuff like that. So I just immersed myself in all of this. And I picked up bits of English, and then I picked up a bit more, and then a bit more, and then a bit more. And then suddenly I sort of had it all. And then when I studied, it all made sense. I talked to a teacher in Athens, in Greece, and I said, how come, the same question I'm asking you, how come you speak English when your classmates don't? And she said, well, she became obsessed when she was a teenager with fashion. That's what she liked, fashion. And the best magazines she could find about fashion, magazines in those days, the best magazines she could find about fashion were in English. So what did she do? She learnt English. Just simple as that. So for some people, the reason they speak such good English is just because they developed a passion for something and they needed English to do it. And so they just went and got it. I don't know whether you're good at learning on your own, but I find those people incredible. How do they do it? I don't know. The next question is, the next answer I get is love. How come you speak such good English and your classmates don't? And many people say to me, I loved it. I just loved it. I loved English. I have no explanation for that. But what we know about all of our students is they're all different. Each one is an individual. And some people love maths, and some people love this, and some people love that. But some students just seem to love English or love languages. And that love for the language drives them forward, and so on and so forth. How come you speak such good English and other people don't? Some people said, well, it's because maybe of a teacher. There was a particular teacher. I had one student one teacher. Where was it? Was it in Russia or somewhere like that? And she said, well, there was this teacher and he was so fantastic that I just wanted to be good for him. And so she learnt English. And then I said to her, you see, it says there 3 out of 20. I said to her, what about the rest of the class? Did they all learn English because of the same teacher? And she said, no, there were about 3 of us. And so I said, how many students were there in your class? She said 20. So the real question then is, if 3 of the students in a class of 20 really get switched on to English because the teacher is so great, but 17 don't get switched on in the same way, here's a philosophical question for you. Is that teacher a good teacher or not a good teacher? Is it enough to at the end of the year to look at your group of students and say, I have inspired 3 students to learn really well. The other 17, yeah, well, it's okay, but not so fantastic. But those are my chief reasons. And there's also a 5th one, which I'm not sure works so well, because they have to, because it's on the school curriculum, because they have exams, because everything else like that. But I'm not sure that number 5 is really the point. I think that the 3 principal reasons that I am told again and again and again is that the reason that they are English teachers, the reason they went crazy for English, the reason that something drove them forward to learn English is either because they had a passion for something and they wanted to do it in English, or because of love for the language. I love English. Or because some teacher inspired them. I wonder if you think of your students, if you could identify any of them who fitted into numbers 2, 3, and 4. Can you think of any students like that? Can you think of any students who have that love, or who would really want to do something, or who really, etc. Let's move away from this for a little bit. Well, let's talk about love a little bit. This is a man called Stephen Chu. I don't know much about him. He's a psychology professor from Stanford University in the United States. Not Stanford, Sanford. And somebody put me on to some little lectures of his that were on YouTube. And these were lectures that he gave to his undergraduates coming to university for the first time. So maybe 19 years old, 18, 19, 20 years old. And they're coming to study psychology at Stanford University. And so he gives them some lectures called How to Get the Most Out of Studying. And the second lecture, it's about 5 minutes, it's only about 5 minutes long, so it's not a great academic lecture. It's designed to encourage his students, to bring them in, to get them in the right mood. And it's called How to Get the Most Out of Studying. And the second of these describes a piece of research from 1969. That's a long, long, long time ago. But it's just a very straightforward experiment. Little experiment. And people, the subjects for this experiment, were given a list of words. And they were told one of four things. Some people were told nothing at all. They just said, look, here's a list of words, read them. Okay, that was it. Some people were told, here's a list of words, and in 2 minutes, 3 minutes, I'm going to test you and see how many words you can remember. Okay. Some people, that's the third group, were told, here's a list of words, and I want you to say which have the letter I in them. Okay. And the fourth group were told, here's a list of words, look at this list and decide which ones you like, which of the words you like. And then what the experimenters did is they asked everyone how many words they could remember from this list. And you've probably guessed the punchline. The punchline is that there was no difference between any of the people. They all remembered exactly the same, except for the fourth. The people who were given the fourth instruction remembered more words than anybody else. And that instruction was look at this list of words and decide which words you like. Isn't that amazing? Which words you like. This is the thing that surprised me, is that it made no difference. If I said to you, I'm going to test you, didn't make any difference whether you were going to be tested or not. But the only ones where it did make a difference were decide which words you like, because when you do that, you have some kind of emotional engagement with the words. Your heart, your soul, whatever you want, is engaged with this task. Now, that was an experiment tried out in 1969, which is even before I was teaching English, quite a long time before. But this book was published in 2021 by Linear Press, a man called Stephen Koslin, who's an emeritus professor of psychology. And as you can see, it's called Active Learning Online, 5 Principles that Make Online Courses Come Alive. It's a good read. As I say, it was published in 2021. But at the beginning of the book, he describes what he does with his students at the beginning of the university year. So they're all sitting in the lecture theatre, all these students, and he divides them into A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B. So all of the students are now in pairs, and he gives them all a list of words. Here it is. Here's the list. And he says, all the A students, I want you to look at this list and decide which words are taller at the beginning than at the end. Taller at the beginning than at the end. And all the B students had to look at this list of words and decide which describes something which is alive. And then after 20 seconds, he got them to turn their pages over like that. And then they had to see how many words they could remember. And just like the previous example, guess what? The B students remembered many more words than the A students. The A students had to say that frog, if you look at frog, it's taller at the beginning than the end because the F has a serif on it. But rat is not taller at the beginning than at the end. Brick is taller at the beginning than the end, so is hug and bear and forge. But the other words aren't. Well, so what? But when you have to decide which words describe something that's alive, something else is going on. Something else is going on. And what Stephen Chu calls this, and Stephen Kostling calls this, is deep processing. Deep processing. And the idea of deep processing is deep. It is quite simply that when you process deeply, you are both cognitively and this is the big thing, and emotionally engaged. There's no point in trying to learn and remember anything if you are not cognitively engaged, if your brain isn't involved in it. Learning involves your brain being consciously and actively involved. That's the big deal. But what these guys are saying is that if your heart, metaphorically, your heart is engaged as well, then you've got a really good chance of learning. Indeed, Stephen Chu goes on to say, if you are processing deeply, there's often a chance that you'll learn things even if you didn't intend to. Deep processing is this whole business of saying, decide which words you like. And when you have to decide which words you like, not only do you use your brain, but you use your heart and your soul as well. You make a personal, emotional connection with the words you have in front of you. And in the case of Stephen Kostling's list, the frog and the harp and the rat and the sheep, deciding which words are alive gives you a level of emotional engagement which is different from just the other task, which words are taller, because who cares? What they call that is shallow processing. Deep, like deep water, shallow water. So tasks like which word has the letter I in it, that's shallow, so what? But these words, this task, which ones do you like, which ones are alive, that's deep, cognitive and emotional engagement. Phew, right. Well, we've been through all that. Now let's actually go on to the topic of this talk, which is learner autonomy. And let's just try and discuss what learner autonomy really is. Because people have talked about learner autonomy for years. Now we know autonomy means on your own, but what does learner autonomy mean? Well, in any classroom, primary, secondary, preparatory, undergraduate, whatever, college, we have English language teachers and English language learners. But what we know, and everything I said at the beginning about how come you speak such good English, etc., everything we know says that it's the learning that matters. The learners, do you see this? The second L is now highlighted. Learners, learning, learners, learning. Everything that happens in the classroom happens in the heads of the learners. And you can be the best teacher in the world and do the most fantastic things. But if the learners aren't learning in here, well, so what? It's the learners that matter. So what does learner autonomy mean? Well, learner autonomy is when students study or learn on their own, either because they have an inner desire to do so, or because they're encouraged and motivated to do so by their teacher or their colleagues and respond to that encouragement by themselves. It's that by themselves, on their own, by themselves, on their own. That's the thing that really matters. And there must be some kind of inner desire, inner drive. I've used that word, haven't I, a few times, drive, inner drive. There must be that present if they're going to do this on their own. So computer, why have you stuck on me? Why am I not able to advance my slide? Do you think something is wrong with my computer. I'm talking to myself. Do you mind? This is rather sad. I seem to have lost all control.
Still stays on the same page, Jeremy.
I know, that's my problem. It
okay.
won't work. We were going so well. Well, I don't know what you think.
Yeah, we don't mind waiting.
In technical terms, we were doing all right. But I've got complete lack of, hold on a minute. Hold on, let me just see if there's something I can do. I'll be with you in a minute. I'm just trying to do some repairs.
Okay, Jeremy, don't worry.
There we are. Has that made any difference? Well, we got a bit of a problem, haven't we? So you know what you have on your screen when you're using a presentation, you've got the arrows, you've got the return button, you've got all sorts of other things, and currently none of them work. So I'm just going to have to do this from memory and see how we get on. Is that okay?
That's okay, Jeremy.
But you'll have to forgive me if I go a bit off track.
Okay.
And what's the time? I won't go on for too long. But anyway, let's see. So that's what learner autonomy is for me. Well, then, if we go back to what we talked about at the beginning, we said that the three things that students that drive students to learn on their own. There was the passion for something, the love of the subject and the teacher. And so it seems to me that if we want to encourage our students to learn on their own, we have to provoke one of those, all of those things. That's what we're going to talk about. That's how it works. Let me give you a kind of metaphorical example. And by the way, I really recommend this technique. I think it's really powerful, but it's a metaphor. So imagine you give your students a reading text, big one, a small one, big one, whatever, at whatever level. It doesn't really matter what the level is, provided they can read. So I guess we're talking about 9, 10 and upwards. Well, I'm not quite sure what age you think in Indonesia, what age students read on average. But anyway, we assume that our students can read more or less in English, either at very low levels or higher levels or whatever you want. So they read a text. Now, one of the reasons I want you to read a text, my dear students, is so that you learn some English and you remember the words and you have a nice time and we have a good class and everything like that. And often with a reading text, what you do is you say to students, find a word in the text that means this, or what does this word mean, or answer this question or answer that question. And that's fine. But how would it be if you said instead, look at the text that you have just read, and I want you, my dear students, to choose which 3 words or phrases you most like, that you like best, and that you want to put in your suitcase and take home with you. I call this suitcase language. The 3 words or phrases from the text that you like a lot and you want to take home with you. Which words and phrases are those? Oh, and by the way, this is not for the class, this is for you. This is for you, each individual. It's for you. Which word or phrase do you want to take home? Do you want to put in your suitcase and take home with you? And you see what we've done? We've said to the students, these words are not the teacher's words. They're not the class's words. They're not the course book's words. They're not anybody's words. They are your words. You are in control of deciding which words you want to learn. Now, we don't do that all the time. Of course, we don't do that all the time. But just that one little example is a way of saying to the students, you know what? You're the learner. It's in your hands. Take charge. Those little suitcase, that suitcase language is your language for you to take home, to put into your heart, to say, it's mine, it's mine. And the metaphor there is to say that I'm saying that you're the person who matters in this, not your classmates, not your teacher. The person who really matters is you. You're in charge. Which words do you want to learn? And that's my metaphor for what it should be all about. I'm going to press no, the arrows are still not working.
Oh, sorry
Okay.
for interrupting, Jeremy.
Yes.
If you don't mind, you could send your file to us so we could help you sharing your files from here.
Yes, we could do that. The only problem is it's in Keynote, which is an Apple Keynote. And my problem I've got at the moment is that none of my computer controls are responsive.
Ah, I see.
For some reason, I don't know.
Okay. Then.
This is what people always say. This has never happened to me before. This is terrible.
Yeah,
because it hasn't
matter.
happened to me. Can you stand me just speaking? Is that okay?
Well, probably that's okay, Jeremy.
You sure? Because it's a bit boring, but I'll try and be clear.
Okay, thank you.
So let's look at some examples of how to encourage students to learn on their own. One way was an article, and by the way, I'll send you after this presentation a list of any references I make, because obviously you can't see them now. But this was an article by Jenny Kemp from ELT Journal from about 2009. And she talked about, she called them listening logs. And when she said, when students come over, when students go to an English speaking country to study, to do anything else like that, or as tourists or anything else like that, what they should do is keep a logbook of what they heard, what they found most difficult, what they found most easy, what they could repeat and try themselves, what struck them as surprising or wonderful or extraordinary. In other words, keeping a diary of the listening experiences they have. Now, it doesn't sound like much, but the moment you say to the students, keep a diary, you keep a diary of what happens to you. I'm your teacher, but I'm not interested really in what I tell you. What I'm interested in is what you do. So the moment you do that, you're in charge. You're acting autonomously. You're taking control of your own learning. And I find that a very powerful idea, because if you're lucky, when you do that, it helps you to develop that love for English. It helps you to be passionately involved. It helps you to be cognitively involved because you think about what's happening. And when you think about what's happening, well, how about that? What about the classroom itself? Well, I wish I could show you what I had been intending to show you, but I can't. So let me describe a technique which, again, you could use at any level and with pretty much any age. It depends, I suppose, on reading and stuff like that. But all this, you put students in groups of 8, 9 students. You don't want small groups, you want slightly bigger groups. put them in groups of about 8 or 9 students, and you give every student a poem, the same poem. Let me see if I can remember the poem I'm thinking of. It's called Midsummer Tobago by Derek Walcott. Anyone know where Tobago is? It's an island in the West Indies, Trinidad and Tobago. So this is a poem in which the poet is thinking back to his childhood, earlier days. And so this is the poem. Broad sunstone beaches, white heat, a bridge, a green river, scorched yellow palms from the summer sleeping house, drowsing through August. Days I have held, days I have lost, days that outgrow, like daughters, my harboring arms. And I love that poem because I don't know about, I have daughters, and but as you can see, looking at my age, they have outgrown my harboring arms. They have their own lives, and they've outgrown my harboring arms. I just love that image. Days, the days of my youth, the days I have held, days I have lost, days that outgrow, like daughters, my harboring arms. Anyway, so that's the poem, and the name of the poet, if you want to search for it, it's called Midsummer, Tobago, Tobago, and the name of the poet is Derek, D-E-R-E-K, Walcott, W-A-L-C-O-T-T. Now, you give each of the students in the group this poem, and then you say to them, and the first time I did this, I was so nervous. I thought, this is going to be a disaster. It's not going to work. The students are going to hate it. It's just, oh, you know, when you try something new in a class, you just get really nervous. You get really scared. So, but the first time I did it, and you say to them, you have 20 minutes. And at the end of those 20 minutes, you're going to come back to the class and you are going to perform this poem to the rest of the class as a group. Now, the only rules are we have to hear the poem. And the only other rule is that every single member of the group must be involved and must be seen to be involved when you perform the poem. And then I said to the students, look, I don't care how you do it. Maybe one person can speak and the others can act out. You can sing it. You can rap it. You can do it in chorus. You can do it one word at a time. I don't care how you do it, but all you have to do is perform the poem. And then I just walked away. Well, that's not quite true. Of course, I didn't walk away. I stayed around. I left them to it. When they came back 20 minutes later, it was extraordinary. And since that first time, I've used this poem many times as a point of comparison. And I've now seen people, I did this with a bunch of teenagers here in Cambridge the other day. Teenagers from around the world were in this group. And you wouldn't believe how creative they were, how inspired they were. And each group was completely different. They did different things. Some of them tried to rap it. It doesn't really work because the rhythm's all wrong. Some of them sang it. So yeah, that's right. There were singers. There were people kind of hugging like that. Days that outgrow like daughters, my hair bring up. Just the most incredible creativity. And you know what? I didn't do anything. All I did was set the activity up. That's all I did. And you know what? The students got more out of that than they probably got from days and days of grammar worksheets and fill-ins and and presentations. Now, what we have to ask ourselves is how much did they actually learn from this activity? Well, I think they learned a lot. First of all, we got the group acting together. We got group participation, and everyone had to be seen to be performing. So they were all, each individual was involved. They got massive repetition of the words. They kept having to look at the words. How are we going to do this word? How are we going to do that word? How does this work? Occasionally, if they were desperate, I might help them with a word if they didn't understand this word. But on the whole, they had to work it out themselves. And in the group, someone would be able to help with this, that, or the other. So it was absolutely extraordinary what happened. And they did it themselves. So maybe one of the clues to learner autonomy is to try, when we're thinking about a group of students, is to try to involve more than one student at a time in this. And we'll come on to that in a minute. What about when you go out of the classroom? Oh, by the way, there's so much more that you can do. And we'll discuss that in the next 8 seminars. Oh, wait a minute, there's only this one. So, but
Mr. Hammer, pardon
yes?
me.
Yeah.
Oh, is it okay if we stop the share screen?
Yes, I think it's a really good idea.
Okay, thank you very much.
Is it?
So the
Yes,
operator,
can you
please,
do that?
you're allowed. Thank you.
Can you do that?
Yes, sure.
Good. Get rid of it. Get rid of it, because it's really upsetting me because it's not working. Let's see. Oh, can you still hear? Oh, that's better. Hello, everybody. I can see you now. I don't know. Are you still awake? I'm so sorry about this. I don't know what my computer did there. Do you know, if I look at you, you all look rather younger than me. All I can tell you is that when I started teaching, well, I'm not going to tell you when, we would go into class with a cassette tape recorder or an overhead projector or something like that. And you plan your whole class around this, using this beautiful overhead projector or this beautiful cassette tape recorder. And you know what would happen again and again and again? The wretched thing wouldn't work. It broke down. The bulb in the overhead projector went, and then you had to do what I'm having to do now, which is to improvise. Let's see if, oh, look, now I've got something here. Can I do the chat? Oh, yeah, I can do the chat. But that's all I can do. Right, okay. Let's see. Oh, yeah, that's it. Broad Sunstone Beaches, White Heat. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, now, there's a teacher, there's a teacher called, I'm sorry, his name has escaped me, but this is another article from the ELT Journal, which I liked. And this was a teacher working with Japanese university students in Japan. And these were university students. Their English was, I guess, B2 level, something like that. In other words, they had pretty good English. And what he said to them was, look, I want you to come to class every Monday with words or phrases you found on the internet that you like. And then we'll build a class dictionary, a class lexical resource. So he sent them out to do their own research, to do their own work. They were the ones who were in charge of getting the English. Very frequently in class, the teacher gives you English. But what this guy said, by the way, I love that beautiful young teacher there. It's down. It's a lovely sight, that the baby there. It's fantastic. It's making me feel happy. The Japanese students were in charge of doing the learning, getting the language, finding things they liked. And what I like about that is that he was saying to them, make the love happen. Find words or phrases on the internet that sound interesting to you, weird phrases, stuff. Your students do this. They hear something in a pop song or something like that, and they want to know what it means. And some of the time, we can explain what it means, and some of the time it's not so easy, and maybe we don't want to explain what it means, but that's another story. So what this guy did, this teacher did, was he said to the students, "You're in charge." And they did that by going online. So let's move into the online world, as we all had to do for 2.5 years recently. By the way, I don't know about you, I was very alarmed. There's a new strain of respiratory illness has suddenly appeared in Argentina. This is what I heard on the news yesterday. Have you heard about this? And I hope to God that doesn't mean it's all going to happen all over again. Anyway, let's not worry about that. Let's worry about computers not working and English language teaching and stuff like that. Right. So if we're going to go online, what can we do about that? What can we do? How can we make students autonomous online? Well, I think the most boring kind of autonomy online is just to get students to do cyber homework, you know, to get them go and do the homework online and stuff. And that's fine. I don't have anything against that, except I don't think there's much, that may not involve much deep processing. It may not involve much love, much like that kind of thing. It's just what it is. It's homework. We'll come back to homework in a minute. But how would it be if you set them a research task? You say, I want you to go online and I want you to research this topic, and the topic will depend on which level you're dealing with, what age you're dealing with, and what the students' interests are. But go and research this online, and when we meet again online, you must present what you found to the rest of the group, and we'll all listen and we'll make comments in the chat box and so on and so forth. Now, the moment we do that, and we put the responsibility in the hands of the learner, that's learner autonomy. Okay, admittedly, we're the ones who are saying what you should do, but that's kind of learner autonomy. By the way, I think that the best kind of research and presentation is not done by a person, it's done by a group of students. You remember the poem that's up there in the chat box? They had to present that as a group together. And there's something about the group having to take responsibility for the whole thing as a group, each individual as part of a group having to take responsibility, which means that this shared enterprise, this shared task is much more powerful sometimes than a solo task. So what I want to do with research is, and I can put students into breakout rooms to discuss how they can do it. They can assign different roles. You're all familiar with breakout rooms, of course you are, because we lived through 2 years of lockdown. You can go into breakout rooms and plan and talk and discuss and things like that, but then you have to come back and tell us what you've done as a group. And there are two ways of trying to make sure that everyone in the group is involved. One of them is a guy called Bill Littlewood, who was a sort of mentor of mine. I don't know whether he's still alive. I hope he is. And I just remember going to a talk of his at a teachers' conference, and he came up with the most brilliant idea. Brilliant idea. You know, when you do group work with students, if you put them in groups of 4 or 5, one student does a lot of work, another student does some work, the third student does a little bit of work, and 2 students just kind of sit there and let it all happen. And he's really concerned with those two students who just kind of, I don't care. So he came up with this idea of numbered heads. So he says in any group, you have to give each other a number. Don't tell me what the number is. You have to just give each other a number. And then when the task is over, he simply says, okay, let's have a look at this group. Let's go for number 3. And the beauty of that is that the teacher doesn't know who number 3 is, and that the students don't know who he's going to choose. And they know that he's not going to choose someone because of who they are. He's just going to choose a random number. So the fact is that any one of you may have to do the reporting back and tell us what went on in the group. So I really like that very much, the idea of numbered heads, which means that with any luck, every student will take equal responsibility because they might be the one to be called upon. And so when you do this kind of group presentation online, which is more difficult online, obviously, unless, you know, one rectangle does the first bit, the second rectangle, the next bit, the third rectangle, and so on and like. But the other way of doing it is simply say, okay, let's go to this group. Let's have number 4. And then whichever of you is number 4 has to present your findings. I think that's really powerful, and that's really good. And the research and the preparation and the working out is really good language learning. Oh, by the way, something I forgot. One of my favorite articles of all time was a little 2-page article by a man called Mark Helgeson. Have you ever come across Mark Helgeson? I know he's traveled around he lives in Japan. He's traveled around that part of the world a lot. He's a great writer and a great speaker. And he wrote an article years ago, and the headline was Mark Helgeson invites students to talk to themselves, which sounded a bit strange. But what he basically said is, okay, full stop. I lived in Mexico for quite a few years, as I said before. And when I first got there to teach English, I didn't speak any Spanish at all. But I do now because well, I loved the sound of it. I love Mexico. I needed to, I wanted to, I had a passion for everything to do with Mexico. But it's very difficult at the beginning when you go and live in a foreign country with a foreign language, you know, because you don't know much. And then you're going to go to the store to buy something, and you need to be able to explain what you want. So what do? Well, as you walk towards the store, have you ever done this? As you walk towards the store, you play the conversation in your head. You rehearse it. Okay, what am I going to say? Por favor, me podrías ofrecer, estoy buscando jabón. And you do this all in your head. Nobody's listening. If anyone sees you walking down the street, you look a bit crazy. And sometimes because you're sort of going like that. But it's absolutely fantastic. And it's the best language practice you ever have, because you get a lot of it, and all the language practice is you. And of course, in my head, you should hear my Spanish pronunciation in my head. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. When it comes out of my mouth, not so much. But so Mark Helgeson had this lovely, he talks about this a lot, getting students to use their inner voice, to speak to themselves, to practice on their own. And we'll come back to that in a minute. So we were talking about working online without face-to-face teaching, and I suggested that research leading to presentation was a really good way of getting students to work on their own. There's a very cruel way of trying to make sure that everyone takes part, of course, and that is to say that there will be a grade for the group and everyone in the group gets the same grade. And then you leave it up to the students to negotiate that and make sure that some students don't just do no work. But that's a bit cruel. But I started this by talking about cyber homework. And homework's a really big issue. As far as I can tell, and I hope you will agree with me, the more homework you do, the better it is. Homework is good for you. Homework means that you're constantly in touch with English and so on and so forth. But getting students to do homework, that's a more difficult question. And we know that when you set some homework, some students come back, they always do the homework, and I love them. And some students do it sometimes, and yeah, they're right. And some students almost never do it, and they've always got a really good excuse. They've always got a really good excuse. There's always, and we can laugh, teachers laugh about the excuses they're given about why I haven't done my homework. And there's one teacher whose name I've completely forgotten at the moment. It's on my presentation, which I'll send you a PDF of the presentation anyway. And she just thought, this is ridiculous. She said, I set the homework for my students. A lot of them don't do it. She said, then I have to mark it. And you know, don't tell any people, young teachers, but marking homework is a real bore. Then she has to mark it, and the whole thing is very, very. It's just very dispiriting. I don't like it. Not a good experience. So what did she do? She said, "Okay, dear students, we're going to try something different. You're going to choose what homework you want to do. The only rule is you have to do some homework, but you can do anything you want. You just have to persuade me that your homework will help you learn English. So if you want to do lyrics to a pop song, you can do that. If you want to do this, you can do this. If you want to do that, you choose. You just have to tell me what you're going to do and say, this will help me learn English because, and if I believe you, that's your homework." And the result was, she says, I haven't seen any research data to back it up, so it may all be a complete lie, but I don't think so. The result was students did do their homework. They did it with enthusiasm. They did it with, enthusiasm, more enthusiasm than before. And even more importantly, she actually quite enjoyed marking the homework because she wanted to see what they'd done. Another example of saying to the students, you're in charge, you make the love happen. It's up to you, you do it, and so on and so forth. What else can students do online? Well, I don't know how it is for you over there, but you know, TikTok is quite a big thing over here. People, they put up these little clips, they put up little videos and things like boom, 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 like that. I'm probably the wrong demographic myself, but so there's TikTok. Well, get students to make their own videos in English and post them where we can see them. Now, look, here's the deal. When you ask students to do some homework, to write something, it just looks like a real boring thing to do. The only person who's ever going to read the homework is the teacher. So it's all about being marked and being graded and so on and so forth. But how would it be if you said to the students, on the contrary, I want you to make a video, a little video, maximum 3 minutes, preferably less, or even a little TikTok-y kind of video. And then you post it where we can all see it. A friend of mine who works in Buenos Aires in Argentina did that with her secondary school students. She worked in a girls' college of secondary age. And she said the effect was remarkable. They knew that the other students were going to see what they had done. They were more careful than they'd ever been about their English. They took more care than they ever did when they just handed it to the teacher. Why? Because they had there was a public audience there to see it, and so on and so forth. So we can do that with students, and so on and so forth. Look, let's call this to an end, and then I reckon you can so I think you can help to sort of moderate any questions or comments that come through,
Okay.
because I'm not even sure that I've nearly finished. Can I? Oh
Okay.
yes, maybe the chat.
Okay, participants, we
okay,
will be
so
so
one
happy
more thing.
to take any questions.
Okay,
Yep.
2 seconds, just a minute. I want to finish with one thing.
Okay.
We have a saying in English. Do you have it? Does it work in your language? And the saying, do you know? Can you complete this phrase? You can lead a horse to the water, but. Okay, it's this. We all have our metaphors and our proverbs and things like that. This one is: you can lead a horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. You can lead a horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. And what that means is you can't force anyone to do anything. I can tell all of you, I want you to take charge of your own learning. And some of you will, and some of you won't. Do you remember that class where 3 of the students were inspired by the teacher and 17 were not? Was the teacher a success or a failure? Well, I think I'm going to say the teacher was a huge success for having inspired 3 students. We do the best we can. And sometimes on a bad day, you think, I can't stand this anymore. It's just not going well. And what does a good teacher do? The good teacher just keeps going. You keep going. You keep pushing and doing the best you can. And that's what it is with learner autonomy. If we can give students tasks, small or big, which provoke hopefully the passion or the love, and that we do it in an inspirational way, some of the students will take the opportunity. And that's maybe the best we can do. It's a pretty good best. So forgive me for this rather peculiar talk, technologically challenged talk, but I'll stop now. And then if there are any comments or questions, David, you can lead us on from here?
Okay, thank you very much, Jeremy Hammer, for your presentation. So participants, we will be happy to take any questions, and it's so interesting. However, it's quite challenging, right, to apply learner autonomy. Okay, so questions from Mr. Ahmad Iza and Miss Lady Sukarmaya. So Ahmad Iza first, time's yours.
Well,
thank you.
That's quite a big question. Look, there are so many things. It seems to me that let's think of the number 4 of those reasons why people speak English, which was the teacher. And there are so many things we can do to provoke that engagement from the student. And they have a lot to do, it seems to me, with the tasks that we give students to do. Now, they can be anything from games to more serious tasks. But what we're trying to provoke with every task we're doing, we want to provoke the students to want to do it. So it's the tasks that really matter. Number two, the attitude of the teacher to the student seems to me to be absolutely critical. Treating students with respect. If things go wrong, dealing with the behavior, not with the student themselves. Showing the greatest quality. What would you say the greatest quality any teacher is? What would be your number one characteristic for a teacher to demonstrate? Sorry? Presentation, okay. Anybody else? What would be your, if I asked you in one word, what is the most important quality that any teacher should have?
Caring.
Theory, personality.
Open-minded.
Open-mindedness.
Inspiring. Caring.
Caring, being caring. And so on and so. By the way, all of those are completely correct. Of course they are. And the caringness, the open-mindedness is the one that strikes me most, because for me, I've thought about this a lot because people often ask, and I end up with one characteristic especially, and that characteristic is curiosity. Teachers need to be curious. And you know, if you think of your school days, that sadly one or two teachers have stopped being curious, and you can recognize those teachers, and so can the students. But I think when the students see a teacher that is still curious, interested in them, interested in why things are happening, interested in the world around them, interested in why this language works and why that language doesn't work. If the students can see that the teacher is curious, they have a chance of being curious themselves. But if the students can't see that curiosity, then I think then even if they don't say it out loud, they might say subconsciously, well, if the teacher isn't curious, why should I be? So curiosity for me is the really big thing. Now, in terms of individual activities to provoke that kind of thing, heavens above, I don't know where to start. Any activity that you use that really works to get the students involved and engaged and happy and completely in the zone, that's the kind of activity that seems to answer what you were asking about. You're familiar with the concept of flow? Does flow, anybody know about flow? Well, quite a lot of people talk. There's a guy in the States, he's from a Czech background, he's called Csikszentmihalyi, and he talks about flow. And flow is where you're in a state where you're so involved in what you're doing that it carries you forward, and that the rest of the world sort of disappears. And the walls of the classroom aren't there anymore. And this sounds very, very, it sounds impossible. But when an activity is going well, when students are really involved, when they're absolutely engaged in what's happening, that flow is achieved. And the rest of the world doesn't really matter. You're concentrating entirely on what is in this zone. I get that in my case, I get that most often through music and playing music and being with other musicians. That happens to me. You may get it through prayer. You may get it through, I don't know how you get it, meditation. That's flow when you're encased in this zone of engagement. Now, any activity that does that for your students seems to me to be an ideal activity. But the only question, I was working for the last 2 weeks with a large group of teachers from Uzbekistan. And my question to them always is, yes, but what will the student get out of it at the end? You've got to be able to say to yourself, when my students have done this, this will have happened. There's no correct formula for what this is, but you need to be able to say where you're going and what you think is going to happen. That's a very long answer, sorry.
You're
Sorry?
still muted, Sir Taufik.
Okay, sorry. Thank you very much for the questions and answer. And next question from Miss Mayang. Miss Mayang, time's yours.
So much, Mr. Taufik. And hello, Mr. Jeremy Harmer. It's an honor for me to see you. I was really nervous. So my students know English. They seem understand what I say. They acquire English words very well. And the big problem is they don't know how to say it. It's always like that. They do very well in English tests, but it's always the problem when they have to produce the English. For example, like in writing, writing, and then speaking. Since the first time I teach English, it's always the big problem. They understand what I say. They were exposed to listening to the English music, to the movie, but it's always hard for them to express it in English. They even try to translate the word one by one from their mother language to English. So how can we overcome that problem? Because they weren't exposed to English like every day because they are not in the international school. So I guess that's gonna be the problem for them too. So do you have
yeah, I completely understand that. Something you said just made me laugh to myself. It's very funny sometimes translating from one language to another, especially when you get idioms and proverbs and things. And if you translate it word for word, you get things that just sound completely stupid if you translate from one language to another. So, for example, that what I said to you, you can take a horse to the water, but you can't make it. You can lead a horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. If you translate that word for word into your first language, it will just sound silly, and everyone will say, "Yeah, what does that mean?" So, but sometimes those things are quite funny, and they make teachers smile when you get those translations. But that's a silly comment. The serious comment: production is much more difficult than filling in a test, than putting a fill in, than choosing ABC and things like that. And how do we get students to do that? Well, the answer, it seems to me, is to support them and give them help, and more than anything else, to give them some kind of confidence. So that, let's go for speaking first. One of the mistakes, it seems to me, that some teachers make is to say, we're going to do speaking in today's class. What do you think about climate change? What's your opinion? And students get in a terrible mess, because it's difficult enough to express an answer to that question in your first language, but in your second language, it's really, really difficult. Especially if I don't give you time to think about it. And yet we often try and insist on, whoa, come on, tell me, what do you think? Speak, speak. And the students then get into that state where they panic, and then they'll start translating or so on and so forth. We need to remember what it's like to learn a foreign language. So in that case, the question then is to say to them, I'm going to ask you a question about climate change, if you want to. I mean, you may not want to talk about it at all, but imagine that's the topic. And in 45 seconds, I'm going to ask you to give me an answer to this question. What do you think are the dangers of climate change? You've got 45 seconds in your head to think about how you're going to say this. And you remember Mark Helgeson, the guy who got students to talk to themselves? Those 45 seconds are the best 45 seconds in the whole class. So that when the student then has to say something, they've had a chance to prepare it. Instead of falling flat on their face immediately, they might say something that's okay. In the same way with writing. Instead of saying, write me an essay, we build it up in stages. Write a sentence. Write write me a sentence. Write 2 sentences. Think about them. Look at them. You can show them to your colleagues. I'll have a look at them. And bit by bit, little building blocks, we build it up. In the case of writing in particular, the most important thing is to show students lots of models of writing. What does writing look like? What does good writing look like? How can you do this sentence and that sentence? How do they all fit together? And we show them models of that. And then they can do things which are at the beginning more like imitation than anything else. And then we can gradually ask them to expand and so on and so forth. But you can't write English unless you've seen a lot of written English. And in the same way, you can't speak English unless you've heard a lot of English. And as someone was saying just now, of course, they do hear a lot of English because you speak to them. And the English they hear the most is you. But I want them to listen with their listening brains as well. So we want them to sort of pick up what they hear and to try and, is there anything I said that you didn't understand? How did I say it? Here's another technique. This is Adrian Underhill. Are you familiar with Adrian Underhill? He's an expert on pronunciation. And he does this. He says that we do pronunciation all the time. And one of the things you can do with students, because look, you're never going to pronounce well unless you've heard well. You can't just suddenly have good pronunciation. It doesn't happen. You have to hear lots of it. When I was trying to learn Spanish, in my head, I would hear Mexican people speaking Spanish, and I wanted to sound like them. Well, they didn't have to be Mexican. They could be anybody. That's not the point. So here's a lovely little activity to give you an example of what I mean. Students have a paragraph. And you say to them, look at this paragraph. I want you to find as many words in the paragraph as you can, which have the sound or, whichever sound, doesn't matter. Or, u, v, b, whichever sound you choose. Find as many words as you can in this paragraph that have that sound. Yeah? And as they're reading and trying to find it, they're doing fantastic pronunciation practice because they're speaking it in their heads to themselves, trying to find a word that has the sound or. And there may be 5 words in the text which have the sound or, maybe only 2. But the act of trying to try to find those sounds is a fantastic learning opportunity. One more. I mean, because we would need to talk about this for a long time. One more. A technique that is used all over the world, that's been used all over the world for thousands of years, is the technique where students have a text, and then I say, you read the first sentence aloud, you read the second sentence aloud, you read the third sentence aloud, you read the fourth sentence aloud. Reading aloud. It's a very common technique. I'm not really a fan of that because I think too often students don't know what they're reading. anyway, I won't tell you why I'm not a fan. But there's one way of using reading aloud which will, I think, help you with what you've asked me about, and that's this. Okay, here you are, students. Here's a paragraph. Here's a text. I want you to choose your favorite sentence. Your favorite sentence. And just put a line under it. Well, you don't have to put a line under it. Choose your favorite sentence. Okay, now, in a minute, I'm going to ask you to read it aloud. So what I want you to do is, first of all, I want you to speak it in your head silently and see if you can say it really well in your head. So you give them some time to practice in their head. Then you say, right now, I'd like everyone in the class to speak your sentence out loud, but not very loud, because otherwise it will be too noisy. But just speak it out loud. Just mumble the sentence. Mumble it. Like that. Practice it, practice. And then you say to the student, right, I want you to stand up and I want you to speak this sentence as if you're making a speech at the United Nations or something like that. Speak it as beautifully and dramatically as you can and give it lots of, just give it lots of passion, give it everything, go for it, go for it. And making it into not very serious, as you can see from me doing all this kind of stuff. It's not very serious, but saying, okay, right, now, I want you to read that sentence out loud as if it was the most important sentence in the world. And because they've chosen the sentence, and because they've had a chance to rehearse and practice that sentence, and I've given them quite a lot of chances, and now because we've made it into a game, well, not exactly a game, but we've made it non-threatening. It's not a test. It's not an evaluation. Because we've done all of those things, now the student has a chance to speak it as well as they can. And with any luck, that's going to be part of their journey to being able to speak a little bit better. So, my answer to your question, little steps. Little steps, a sentence, 2 sentences, 3 sentences, maybe imitating a sentence and adding a bit of your own, maybe looking at lots of examples of how you could write this kind of thing, to give you an idea. Little steps with speaking. Don't ask students to give complex opinions. Just ask them to say something very simple. Most of all, give them thinking time, practice time in their heads. Let them have some confidence. Let them have a little bit of confidence that what they're going to say is not going to be a complete disaster. You know? Oh gosh, I could go on for a long time. But that's the kind of thing. I mean, by the way, with the problem, the question you have is the question we all have as teachers. You know, I mean, when someone like me talks, it all sounds perfect. Oh, you can do this, you can do that. But classrooms aren't perfect. Classrooms are messy, difficult, awkward, complicated places where sometimes things go well and sometimes they don't go well. And most of the time, it's somewhere in between. And I repeat, we do the best we can, and what good teachers do is good teachers just keep going, and good teachers are curious, and what they do is they try and work out what happened in the classroom and why, and how could I do it differently, how could I do it better, that didn't really work, why not, what happened there, why was that student, why was she disengaged? Well, that's what we do.
Okay.
Thank you very much, sir. That's very insightful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Mayang, for your question. And Mr. Hamler, is it okay to go on, or you want to stop?
Let's have about one, maybe 2 questions.
1 or 2 questions. Okay, yeah. One more questions from Mr. Gama.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taufik. Hello, Mr. Hamler.
Hello there.
It's been a pleasure for me to meet you, because for years I know your name for the books I've read. And now I met you. Right, it's very insightful presentation about learning autonomous. And I have a question regarding to a term that absolute beginner, which means that they don't know an English before, right? And I often met those kind of students. And my question is, can we apply the autonomous autonomous learning technique to them? Because yeah, there's something that questioning me in my mind.
Yeah. The first answer is not in the same way. Of course not. But the principle is the same. Look, what do we do with beginners? With absolute beginners, we teach them very simple things at the beginning. All over the world, people learn how to say, "What's your name?" or "Good morning," or "How are you?" or something like that. How can we say to students, learn on your own, if all they can say is, "What's your name?" "My name's Jeremy." Heavens above, that's really, really difficult. Well, I'll tell you how. No, I won't. I'll make some suggestions. And the first is, there are places where they can hear people saying that. We live in an age where they can find that. You can find little examples of that online. So you tell them where they can go and look for it and go and try it and give it a go, or just listen to it. You can give them opportunities to, here are some words here. Do you want to learn how these words are? Well, why don't you come along next time with 10 words that you found out how to say them in English. Just use translate or something like that, and come along with 10 words you found, or come along with here's a sentence. I wish my ideal job would be, and then say to them, come with as many answers to that question as you can. You can give, it's rather like the answer I gave to the earlier question. You can give little tasks, just little tasks that they can do themselves. And lots of them won't do them. But you remember the 3 out of 20. Some of them will. And those people will, you can see it will almost be fast-tracked. You see their progress going. So a lot of what I was talking about was higher level. Some of it was rather metaphorical and abstract. But all of these things can be moved into a small scale. I can say my absolute beginners know nothing. Well, they know something, and I can get them to come along to the next class with their they've completed this simple sentence in 10 different ways. And you can use translate, you can use anything, you can ask anybody you know, I don't really care. And then we'll talk about what you found out and we'll make it correct. That's a simple answer.
Right. Thank you very much for the insightful answer.
Thank you. Okay. Well, Mr. Hammer, I think we have to end the Q&A session because our time is running out. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen.
Can I just say before you finish it completely, I want to say,
by all means, please.
Thank you very much. I wanted to especially thank Transform and Target ELT, who are the people who arranged for this session to happen. They're my good friends, and I want to thank them and acknowledge their part in this. I want to apologize to all of you for the fact that for some reason that I completely don't understand. I just had, I don't know what happened. Anyway, my whole computer seized up and I'm just only grateful that this bit still works. But otherwise nothing was happening. I couldn't make nothing was working. I just had a static screen. I apologize for that. And I apologize as a result for the fact that it was a bit chaotic, the talk, because I was relying on memory alone. And my memory is not so good anymore. And,
it doesn't matter.
But I want to say what a pleasure it has been to be invited. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Mr. Hammer. Give applause for Mr. Hammer, Jeremy Hammer. Thank you very much for your amazing presentations. It's
Thank
a
you very much.
wonderful day to have you here. And for the participants, don't forget to fill in the link of feedback form. If you want to get the certificate, please fill in that feedback form. And we have just had the great fortune of having one of ELT's most respected and influential voice with us here today, Mr. Jeremy Harmer. Give applause once more time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank
I
you.
hope we could see you again,
Sir.
Mr. Harmer.
Inshallah, yes, I hope so. yeah.
Inshallah. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the organizing committee, we would like to say thank you very much for your active participation today, and have a lovely day. I believe
Mr.
you
Taufik,
could
sorry.
get takeaways, right? And see you in the next
Sorry, Mr.
ACTA
Taufik,
training.
before
And
we
before
close-
we end the session, we have some information for you. Okay. So don't forget to access the link for the feedback. Yep, Mr. Rizan, would you
Sorry, no, because
say
I
something?
thought that you were closing and that the link wasn't given, but now it's already there in the chat.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Rizan. So audience, you can access the link for the feedback, and the certificate will be sent to your emails within the three days, inshallah. Okay. So see you in the next ACTA webinar. Don't forget, there will be LCDU talk show on the 4th of October at 4 p.m. I wish you could join, and see you in the
Wait.
next meeting. Yep.
Mr. Taufik, sorry.
Okay. Mr. Rizan.
There is someone here who says that there's should be a photo session.
Okay, before we leave, let's take a picture.
I hope that's
Yeah.
okay with you,
Yeah,
Sir
yeah,
Jerry.
that's-
All right. Okay. And the
Uh,
operator, are you ready?
So what did we just